I don't know how to let myself express anger because it's been such a dangerous emotion for me to express. So, like the other day, I was cooking and I was making like a bag of frozen potatoes and they were all frozen together. And so I slammed it on the counter and I started hitting it to crunch up all of the pieces. And it felt so good. I pounded the shit out of that bag until potatoes exploded all over my kitchen. But I still had all this in there. Like, and I was like, I don't know what to do with all this energy. And so I've been trying more and more to get that energy out in my body. So instead of just stuffing it down or eating or just like deep breathing, I go for a walk. That helps to get some of that adrenaline out of my system, but it doesn't address that at my core. I'm angry. And also there's a deeper level of that, which is rage. And I don't even know what to do with rage because I think that there's a time and a place for deep breathing, but there's also a time and a place for justifiable expression of anger. My gut reaction is to suppress that, is to push it down. And I'm starting to think, why am I doing that? Why am I letting myself try so hard to not let anger come to the surface?
I think there are probably a lot of reasons. One is that we were conditioned as women that we don't show our anger, that it ends up looking like rage, even if it's just surface anger or frustration or that we've had enough. Even a boundary is often called rage, which is not appropriate. I think the other thing is expressing our anger makes us believe that there's something we can do about what we're angry about. Like expressing the anger, maybe chopping up the potatoes, is going to make you feel better about the oppression in Minnesota when it's really not. So expressing that anger might be in the moment what you need, but it's not going to actually change anything long term. And for me personally, I hate feeling angry. I hate it. I probably am more likely just to push it down than to express it.
I think that the purpose of anger is to move us to action. I don't know. I don't know if anger has a positive purpose, but it's there. It's one of the core emotions that we are given as human beings. I would like to think that my letting myself feel anger and express anger motivates me to actually do something. So let's maybe we just back off for a minute about the collective communal rage that I'm experiencing because this isn't just about the things that are happening in Minneapolis right now. It's also just in daily life. When things happen in my daily life, I very rarely, if ever, even raise my voice to express what's going on, even though I can feel it in my gut, I can feel it in my body. I do have one extraordinary challenge right now in my household, and that is that I have a significantly disabled special needs son who is extremely sensitive to any kind of negative expressions of emotions. So if my dog on the other side of the room is eating something in the kitchen that he shouldn't be, and I go, no, 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 my son will have a meltdown because he doesn't know what to do with that emotion. So just generally speaking, I just don't have space to feel that, but I wish that I could. I wish that I would have the opportunity to just be angry and to let it come out.
Is it ever useful for that anger to come out? I mean,
Yeah,
what is the end goal of having that anger come out other than not tying your stomach up in knots? I mean, I think there might be some other ways of dealing with anger other than acting angry.
that's the question. When we don't let the anger out, we push it in. And what that has done for me in my life is emotional dysregulation, is overeating, is other addictions. That's what happens when I don't let myself express anger. There are a ton of healthy ways to express anger. I'm not talking about having to punch walls. But maybe if there was a gym that had a punching bag, I would love to actually express that in that way. What I'm saying is, I think anger has to come out physically. It doesn't have to be violent, but I do think that anger has to come out of us or it lives in our cells. That's kind of what I'm struggling with right now is how do I just let myself be angry about a thing instead of constantly talking myself down off a ledge?
So let's talk about an ideal scenario. Let's say someone cut you off or did something minor and you have a reaction to that, instead of pushing it down, in an ideal world, what would be the manifestation of that anger?
For me, if I wasn't pushing it down, I would probably just straight up scream right into my steering wheel. And then I would want to just flip them off and scream at them and tell them all the things and then let it pass. That's what I wish that I could do. Typically, instead, I will twist myself in knots to try to tell a story about why the person did the thing to excuse them from doing the thing, right? Like, well, maybe they just got a phone call from a loved one and they're very, very sick and they're trying to get home in a big old hurry. I will make those stories up to placate my own anger. And I'm tired of it. I'm just tired of it. Like sometimes I just want to be like, I don't know what your excuse is. Don't care. It doesn't matter. It made me angry and I need to get that out. So there have been times when I've experienced significant betrayal. And what I did with that anger was I drove down to the riverside and I sat in my car and I just screamed into the river. I pounded on my steering wheel. My whole body let it out. Oh my God, it felt so good. I can't even tell you how much better I felt after it. And it wasn't violent. Wasn't directed at a person, but letting it physically come out of my body was so much more satisfying and I think healthier than if I had continued to do the self-talk, talking myself down, making excuses and doing all that bullshit. I just want to learn how to be angry, and it's okay for women to be angry. It's okay for me to be angry. I don't think it's a bad thing.
I don't really identify with anger that much. I don't like the feeling. When I feel angry about something, there are a couple circumstances that repeatedly make me angry, but in my real life, if there's something that I start to get angry about, I do try to talk down like it's really not that important. And genuinely it's not that important. It's not worth my energy. It's not worth my physical reaction to that. It's not worth yelling at somebody. It's not worth getting into that situation where maybe someone cuts you off and they had a bad day and you yell at them and their grandma just died, right? So to me, it's not worth all of that. So I feel like there's probably a lot of anger going on with you right now that you haven't been able to let go in consistent, genuine ways. And now it seems like this big old ball of something that you just need to get out. And I completely understand that. There are the couple circumstances that I get angry about. I don't like when people drive badly in front of my kids. If it's just me, it doesn't bother me as much, but I'm a rage defensive driver. So if someone is coming out of their driveway and my son is on the passenger side and they're like not looking like they're going to stop, I get so angry. And I've actually sometimes screamed, "You're threatening my family!" And I would just get really upset. And then I would let it go. And usually my son, who is like your son, he's very sensitive to my emotions. He's kind of an empath. And so he doesn't like rage or anger either. And so he tries to say, look, they didn't do it on purpose, and we talk it out, right? So in my life right now, there aren't that many things other than significant injustices that get me to that rage point. I get frustration and I get disbelief in what's going on and I get motivated to do something about it as much as I can. But that anger, I don't identify with that as much. But I would love to talk more about what it looks like. Is it from anger that's been bottled up for decades? Is it anger from a couple of big events? Because I could get angry about a couple big events too. I could get angry about that. What does it look like?
I think that that's exactly the question that I'm asking, which is why do I shy away from any kind of anger, big, small, angry, rage, that whole side of that emotional spectrum? My gut is to shy away from it. And not all unpleasant emotions are bad emotions.
True.
So just because I don't like feeling it doesn't mean that I should work so hard to never feel it. I think, honestly, any human being that never allows themselves the privilege of anger is not experiencing the full range of human emotion as we were given it as a gift.
I think there's a difference, though, between pent up, built up anger about things that you weren't able to release at the time and living a life where you're able to let that anger out in that moment, in whatever manifestation that is, And it doesn't have to be hitting your steering wheel. And it doesn't have to be hitting a punching bag. It could be. It could be yoga. For me, oftentimes I shovel snow angrily, and it makes me feel so much better. So whatever that manifestation is when it comes up, maybe letting that go in the moment is the way to prevent ourselves from having this big frustration at not being able to let the anger out. Maybe there's maybe one of your doors is closed.
I think you're hitting exactly on what I'm talking about, which is that I don't feel like I have been given permission to let that out in the moment in any kind of way that affects anybody else around me. And I think that we can be angry in the presence of other people without being violent towards them. And in one real sense, those people are responsible for their own emotions. So I think a lot of it has to do with the way that we were raised, either specifically us or generationally or gender wise, but we were raised that our anger cannot affect other people. We can't be angry in the presence of other people because, and that's my big like, what? Because what? Like, let's say I do yell at somebody on the road for cutting me off and their grandma did just die. Why then am I not allowed to be angry that they cut me off? Just because they had a story that maybe would excuse it, why am I still not allowed to be angry? Because maybe they're just being a dickhead. But I always have to give them the benefit of the doubt over my letting my anger out in the moment.
But does that anger have to be more than the feeling and expression of anger? It has to be the feeling, expression of anger at that person so that they know that you're angry.
No, it doesn't have to be at that person, but I'm not even shouting those things in my car where they can't hear me.
Okay, so
right?
because you hit a nerve with me with the anger that affects other people. So if we look back a couple podcasts, I don't know where it's been, around Christmas traditions and how we as parents try so hard to make our kids happy, and that if we create the magic and we end up happy and we want them to be happy, that they're going to be happy. I think it works the exact same way with anger, that because we're angry doesn't mean our kids are angry or have to be angry, or the people around us have to be angry. Us expressing anger in no way controls the other person's anger. That's their emotion to have, not ours to have. And I think it's very fair to say that even if you yelled at that person, they didn't have to be angry back at you or hurt because you said that. They could easily, no, I take that back, not easily. They could say, oh, that woman's angry, and then go on with their life.
Yes, they could. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You exactly nailed it on the head. Why do I have to always be the one to control my anger so that other people around me don't have to feel the unpleasantness of my anger?
I think because we were raised, and we probably both live in environments where other people are so tied to our own emotions, whatever they are, that if we behave angrily, we automatically assume, or we're taught, that other people then would be affected by it in a negative way, and we're then responsible for their anger or their unhappiness.
And that's it right there. I think it is okay for us to have an angry emotion and it affects other people that are in our sphere. I think that's okay.
No, though. It's up to them whether it affects them.
That's the block right there, is that the conditioning that I've experienced has said, if someone else is going to have an emotion because of my emotion, that we're responsible for it. That's the words you just used. And I agree with you that that's the thought, is that I'm responsible for having made them mad if they are in the sphere of influence in the moment when I express my anger. And that's what I'm talking about when I say I want to figure out how to move past that so that I can just be angry in a moment and not have the entire world fall apart because I expressed anger in the presence of other people.
I think there are a couple things making that really difficult. One of them, we love the people around us. We love them so much, especially we both have sensitive sons. We both love them and don't want to be angry around them because we know what it would do to them, even though their emotions are their own, because they're both kids. The other thing is, you and I tend to be the rock in our families. There might be a sense that if we show anger, it looks like we're falling apart and then we're not that rock. And I think that's probably a mistake to think that. I think it's more likely that if we show our full range of emotions and we don't let ourselves suppress our own anger and end up having that come out sideways in some other way, that's actually showing some healthy rockness, right? That's the kind of rock I would want, is someone who's able to control their emotions in such a way that they can let it out when it's appropriate and not let the emotions control them by stuffing it down. And I think we're looking at it maybe backwards, that the stronger person, which is what we want to be for our families, is the one who's able to express an emotion. Even if we know that our sensitive children are going to be affected by it.
We are not really helping our children to express their own emotions and anger. When I constantly have an environment where anger is not really allowed, am I ever then giving my child the opportunity to learn what to do with their own emotions when they're feeling it? So I do actually give my son a lot of space for his emotions because he cannot control his emotions. The special needs issues that he's dealing with is just the emotions come out, whether he wants to or not. And I give him space for that. And I will say things like, that seems like that made you really angry. Like, I get it. Yeah, I'd be angry too. And giving him space to let that out. But I don't give myself the same grace.
Yeah, it's true. I think we've been trained that when we express anger or when we let it out and when we're honest about really how we're feeling, it can come back and bite us in the ass, honestly. And I can think of several examples, even recently with you. You let out anger once, I think in a very justifiable way, in front of your middle son, and he didn't like that. I'm not going to say he punished you because that's putting a lot of power into his hands, but you punished yourself quite a bit for the reaction that he had. And then with your son being sensitive, if you're yelling at the dog to don't eat that because you're going to die, Oslo, then and your son has a reaction to that, that's going to train you not to do that. With my son, he's able to express his emotions and he's able to have his own opinion and he expresses his own opinion. And if he doesn't like when I say something that's angry, I'm going to be trained to not do that because I care about his feelings, even though that's not my feelings to control. So us being trained over and over and over and over again not to express anger, I see why we don't.
I see why we don't too. And I think the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because I'm in a place in my life where I'm ready to move past that, but I don't really know how. I've accepted that my continuing to suppress my anger is leaning into the arena of people pleasing. And I just don't want to be that anymore. I think that there are a lot of times, even out in the world, where anger would be justified. This past weekend, my son was in the hospital. He's fine, but I was there the whole time with him. And I noticed myself over and over again over placating the nurses and the doctors and being extremely grateful. I wanted to push a little bit. It was actually easier for me to push on behalf of my son than it ever is for me to push on behalf of myself. But I also found myself saying a thing and then the smile comes, right? Because I don't want someone to know that I'm really upset about this. And I think part of the reason I was afraid of it in the moment is because they have my kids' health and life in their hands. And I don't want to do or say something that's going to make them treat him differently because his mom was pissed. And so it came up a lot over the last few days. And every time I did that little half smile at the end of a phrase of something that was really not a smile worthy thing to say, I caught myself going, what the fuck was that? You know, I was walking past people in the hallway and moving out of the way and then smiling like, I'm so sorry that I might have almost been in your way. Those kinds of things, like I notice that I'm getting to where I want to stop doing that little smile thing at the end, and I want to stop refraining from being angry because there are times when people do things to us in real life where the appropriate response is anger, and I don't have that yet. I don't yet have that skill. I can think of a number of situations in like auto repair shops and places where people do and say things to belittle me and to try to make me feel small. And anger would be an appropriate response in that moment, and I don't yet have that skill.
Okay. I've got a bunch.
If you are liking the content, please like and subscribe, comment, and invite a friend to listen in.
Okay. I've got a bunch.
Okay.
So what we're talking about is a freeway. We got 6 lanes going this way, 6 lanes going that way. I want to narrow it down to 2 lanes, and they're not the same lane. Okay. One of them is the anger. So the anger that they're not giving your son enough what he needs, or that they're not responding to your questions, or that they're only visiting him once a day, whatever the anger is, that's what it is. Frustration, anger, whatever we want to call it. That's one lane on the freeway. The other lane of the freeway is giving people that smile when you get out of their way. So first of all, girl, stop getting out of people's way. Just stop. Everyone should get out of everyone else's way. Everyone. And
Yeah.
if they don't, then you don't. But I feel like that's a whole different lane of, that really goes back to our people pleasing conversation of, not only do we get out of the way, but then we smile to make sure that it's safe for us. So that's a whole other lane. I'd like to propose something totally different. And it comes down to not something as pedantic as language, but I feel like what you're talking about as a category is much, much deeper and more nuanced and more dynamic than anger. What you're feeling is severe love for your child. What you're feeling is passion about something. What you're feeling is a deep desire to combat injustices. And you're piling all that into one category of anger. And I think it's much more than that. And I think if we were able to rephrase it as to passion and love and motivation instead of anger and anger and anger, then it might help us to get to a place of being able to let that out when it's appropriate. I saw you the other day getting motivated. You were motivated and you took action. And that was amazing. And that wasn't anger, but that was letting out that emotion. And it got you to a place that was actually quite good. Another one could be passion. You love your son deeply. And so if they're not treating him the way he needs, you feel love for him. You don't feel anger. And if that love comes out as, I need you to go get a medication and bring it to my son in the next hour, or at least give me an update, that might come across in your mind like anger, but I think that's just love for your son.
I hear what you're saying. I don't know that I necessarily agree that feeling that I had, which was go do your fucking job, is love. But I think the emotion that's coming out in the moment is anger or frustration. I think love is the motivation, but that's not the emotion.
You're absolutely right. Right. But whatever that feeling is, you're able to let it out because it's not a negative.
And that's what I'm trying to say is maybe all anger isn't all negative. But right now, I'm not in a place where I'm even allowing myself to have any anger if it's in the presence of other people. And I think the interpersonal is a bigger issue. When I'm by myself and I stub my toe, I can let that anger out. That's fine. But as soon as other people are around, and particularly if other people are the cause of the motion, that's where I really struggle. So it's the interpersonal. Being angry in front of other people or at other people is still really a struggle.
So you're not struggling with letting your anger out if you're by yourself.
Yeah.
You're struggling with letting the anger out when it potentially affects other people.
Yeah. Even when it's like precipitated by other people. If other people do or say things that warrant an angry response, I still don't have that skill yet to be able to be like, really? Fuck you for that. And what that ends up doing is it silences my voice. And I want to move to a place where I can verbally express what I'm feeling to somebody who just did or said something to me that warrants a response of that's not gentle and kind. I want to have the gift to do that.
So is there a way to have someone warrant that response and you're able to give that response without rage? Can you let them know that was incredibly inappropriate? I don't like the way you behaved. Is there a way to say that without rage? Something in between people pleasing and rage.
Yes, but why? That's my question today is why? Why do I have to limit the intensity of what I'm feeling for someone else? Why?
Yeah. I personally have a couple of reasons. One, I don't like the way it feels. Two, it's not going to accomplish my goal. If I want someone to do something differently and I rage at them, I doubt they're going to all of a sudden say, oh, okay, yes, you're right, I'll do that for you. So it's not to the end that I want. Me personally, it doesn't make me feel better to do that. It makes me feel worse. And on top of that, I still feel like I'm responsible for other people's emotions. So all of those things together make me not, I don't know that I want to get to that point.
Okay. So that middle one that you said about that it's not going to get you to your goal, this is where the nuance really comes in. So is there a way to express that I'm angry without being a total dickhead in response, right? Like I don't have to raise my response to the level of their dickheadness. But the response I typically would give is very measured and very controlled. And what I'm saying is, can't I let the anger out in a way that is still respectful, but it lets them know that what they just did and said is not okay with me? And I think that you just hit right on it, which is we have been taught that the only way to accomplish our goal is by being keep sweet.
I don't think that's what I'm saying. I feel like we have the right to raise our voices, raise our anger, raise our retort to them to the level of their dickheadedness. I do. But if we get back to the person who cut us off and their grandma just died, they're not being a dickhead, right? So I can't be angry to that level of dickheadedness when they really weren't doing that, right? If it's a doctor, like my daughter had surgery when she was 5, and when a doctor come in and said, here, I know how to get that tape off. Don't worry. Don't worry. You'll be totally fine. And he ripped the thing off her back. She's never trusted doctors since then, ever. And I was pissed, but he was a big dickhead about it. So in that circumstance, I would say, yeah, what did you do? Get out of here. I don't want to see you again in my daughter's room, right? I think that's appropriate with that level of intensity and anger. We have the right to be as angry as they are dickheaded, right? But we have to give them grace that maybe they're not being as dickheaded as they might appear to be in that moment. But I'm not saying be nice and sweet. I'm not saying keep sweet. I'm saying why rage if someone else is suffering from something we don't know about?
Why do we always have to give them benefit of the doubt? Always. Like that's a lot of emotional labor that we have to do between whatever the thing is that they did or said and our response to that. It's a huge burden of emotional labor to try to do all that work of, well, let me think of what like could have possibly, and is this a situation that warrants that maybe they have some other reason why they did or said the thing, you know, and maybe I just make a blanket rule that when it's a car situation, I don't know the story. So in a car situation, I'm going to rage in my car to myself. If it's in an auto shop situation, I don't have to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I still have a hard time being angry in the moment and rising to their level of dickheadness. So yeah, there's going to be situations, but man, the emotional labor that we have to do between the event and the response is mind-blowing.
I don't see it the same way because I would be fine getting angry to my perceived the level of their dickheadedness, angry or sarcastic. I had an auto parts guy the other day who I really wanted to be angry with. I had an appointment at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 11 o'clock, when I was still there, he said, well, we'll take your car any minute now. And I said, well, what's the point of an appointment? You know, next time just tell me you can't take it until 11 o'clock and I'll come back. And he said to me, do you know how auto repair shops work? And I wanted to like just fuck you, right? But I didn't. I said, no, please tell me how auto repair shops work. I don't know. So anyway, that was my sarcastic response.
My question is, why would a man be allowed to then in that situation go, are you a fucking dickhead? And the two of them would tussle it out and they would figure out who's on top and they would get it sorted. But we can't do that because the minute we start to raise our voice, the minute we start to express that that was a really shitty thing to say to me, then we become the crazy. We become the uncontrolled, you know, we're the bitch. We're the fucking bitch that deserves to be fucking shot in the head because we allowed ourselves the privilege of anger. See, you can see the anger coming out. This is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about someone cutting me off in the road. I'm talking about that we are not allowed to be angry in a way that a man can be angry in the same situation and have an angry response, and they would work it out. There's an unspoken like understanding that if a man says something dickheadish to another man, they can say something dickheadish back and they will figure it out. The minute we say something dickheadish back, we've completely destroyed any credibility. The outcome is, as you just said, we don't accomplish our goal. So men can do that and then they get the goal accomplished. And as soon as we start to be angry about a thing, we're just completely discounted and our goal is never going to be accomplished. We've just made it harder for ourselves to get our goal accomplished because we allowed ourselves in that moment the same anger that a man would be allowed with a completely different outcome.
You've just opened up a completely new room, not new, but it's a whole new area of conversation. And that is the difference in allowable emotions between men and women. And when we first started this topic, that's where I thought we were going to go. But that's a whole separate conversation. And I have to say, we should have that conversation about what men are allowed and what women are allowed. I do know that I raised a girl, and when she was about 12 to 16, they would torture each other emotionally and psychologically. Never physical, ever. My son now, who's 12 to 16, gets in scrapes, right? And it's just the weirdest thing in the whole world, but I think it's normal for a 12 to 16-year-old. When I see adult men being dickheaded to each other and the guy dickheaded back and they work it out between themselves, I see that as significant emotional immaturity and lack of intellect. So I don't want to get to a place where I can fight with a guy, even verbally fight with a man, the way a man fights with a man, because I think that's immature. And I think that is lack of development. And I think it's lack of vocabulary and nuance to be able to have that conversation and move it forward in a way that's good for both parties. I don't respect at all men who are fighting it out amongst themselves above the age of 16.
That is really interesting. That is really interesting because I actually see our inability to express our angry emotion as a lack of emotional maturity.
It's a totally different take.
Yeah. And I get your point. Like, men being men. Yes, there's definitely a lack of maturity there. At the same time, they get their shit done. They walk away and go to the bar together afterwards. So there's something that's going on there where they're allowed to have that anger and it doesn't completely derail everything that they were trying to get accomplished. I really feel stifled as a human being that's not given space and permission to be angry outwardly in front of other people. I feel like that is a lack of maturity to be able to express the fullness of the range of human emotions.
So you're talking about a spectrum, though, and on one
Yeah.
end is the smiley, I'm going to save myself, and the people pleasing and the stay sweet, which honestly makes me want to vomit.
Yeah.
The stay sweet, that just no, no. Okay, that's way over here.
Yeah.
Way over here is the rage, and that's where you get the fist fights and the adult men in each other's faces, like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of area in between there, and I'm wondering where you feel stuck because
Okay, so
I don't want to be here at all,
so
and I don't want to be here at all.
put your hands up again. Okay, so thinking backwards. So
Oh, sorry. Here. Okay.
no, you go you go the way you were. Okay, so if where we are right now is closer to your left, yeah, way
Yeah.
like furthermore over.
Like
I want to be
here.
more center, and maybe
You want to be
push.
here.
I want to be here, or maybe even a little bit further. And I
Yeah.
feel like I'm nowhere near that at all. You're right. I
Okay,
do not
okay,
want
that's
to
great.
get into fist fights with people. I never want that. But there is a big difference between where I'm at and where I want to be. Fundamental question is, why don't I feel like I have permission to get to that place where I can yell at a person for saying something rude to me? And then how do I change that? How do I get to that place? Because I want to be able to do that without it crushing me. Because like you said, if I did allow myself that privilege in a public sphere, I would then go home and berate myself over it. No dudes are doing that. They're not going home and being like, "Oh man, maybe I shouldn't have said dickhead to that guy." No, they're not doing that. They're over it. So, where can I get to and how do I get there?
Yeah, I think I'm really glad that you clarified this because I felt like here's where you are right now, and I felt like you wanted to go over here, like
No.
just short of fist fighting. You want to yell at somebody, right? And I understand that feeling because your anger is not being expressed at all right now. You're way over here. You're staying sweet.
Yeah. Well,
You feel that compulsion to stay sweet. Yeah,
yeah.
I know, but like relative
Yeah,
to people
relative.
who are in our state of being. But I feel like maybe your desire is because you're stuck somewhere here that you want to go way over here. But maybe
Yeah.
maybe if you got to middle,
That's what I'm
that would be enough, and
That's
you'd
what
actually
I'm
feel so
talking
much
about.
better about that because you also wouldn't have to rage at people.
Exactly that. Exactly that. I think that there are women who have moved to that middle place and they're crazy and they're bitch and they're discounted and they're diminished and belittled. So there's two things going on. One, I just want to be that person that can just like appropriately express the anger that's appropriate for the moment, no matter who's around. But also, how do we do that without? I mean, we can't. We can't. Once we get to that point, we are just going to be crazy.
Let me ask you this: who is discounting you and calling you a bitch?
Well, right now, nobody, because I don't do it out in the world. But
Well, who would? Who would?
if the tire guy had said to me what they said to you about, do you know how tire shops work? if instead of the response which you gave, which is extremely, it's almost too intellectual for them to get it, right? Like what you said, like they don't get. Let's say instead, I would say, you don't have to be an asshole to me right now. I came in here, I blah, blah, blah. I had an appointment. You didn't, blah, blah, blah. And I'm putting this on you. This is a mistake that you made, and you blah, 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 blah. Immediately, they're going to turn that into that I'm a crazy person. And they're going to push my time from right then to another 3 hours from now in retaliation for me being angry in the moment.
Okay, so a couple things. I don't think that's true, first of all. Second of all, you saying that to him is not rage in any stretch. I think that's right here in the middle.
Yeah.
Just responding with something like, my time is important and you're treating me terribly right now. I think that's more than reasonable. Third of all, the unfortunate truth, and we've lived this for 50 years, is that they're going to go back in that garage and they're going to talk about that crazy bitch no matter what we do.
Yeah.
Whether we're angry at them or whether we're quiet to them or sarcastic to them or meek to them or whether we stay sweet, they're going to go back and call us that psycho bitch anyway. So I really don't care. If you yell at them and they call you a bitch, who cares? Who cares? Why is his opinion important?
No, you're right. It isn't. And I think that's the work that I'm trying to do with us right now is how do I get to the point where I'm like, wait a minute, do I really care what he thinks? No, I probably don't. So there are probably layers and layers of reasons why it's hard for me to get to that point where I can just verbally lash out in response to having been verbally lashed upon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I want to get to that point where I can just say that thing to those people. And it's not that I never have. And in the times that I have allowed myself that privilege, it really does feel good because I'm not the kind of a person that's naturally going to move to that point of rage. Okay. I think this is part of the issue is one of the reasons it feels so uncomfortable to allow ourselves the privilege of that anger is because it's scary, because we don't know where it ends. We don't yet know the limits of what our anger can push us to. And I think I'll speak for myself. I'm a little bit afraid of what I'm capable of if I open up that door because anger feels uncontrolled. It feels like once you open that door to letting yourself feel that viscerally, then whatever comes out of my mouth next, I don't really have a lot of control over it at that point. And it's scary. It's scary because I'm always so measured in what I say and how I say it and to whom I say it. I don't want things coming out my mouth that I didn't craft in my head 50,000 ways before I actually said it out loud. And anger doesn't give me that space to do that. Anger just like, what? It comes out. So I think there's a part of me that's just a little bit afraid of myself and what I'm capable of doing and saying if I open up the floodgates to let that anger come out.
Let's pressure test this a little bit because it's as though you're putting a floodgate or a dam or a door. And so let's go back to my hands. Your door is probably right here, like right here.
Yeah.
And so if you open that door and go through it, you're afraid, whoop, you're going to go all the way to the other end.
I am afraid of that.
I don't think that's going to, I think there's a long way between those two.
Oh, absolutely. But the fear is still real. The fear of
fear is real.
That even if I open the door this much, if I anticipate to open the door this much and it opens here, if that's beyond what I can control, it's scary to feel out of control and it's easier to suppress the emotion than to let it out because it's scary to feel that out of controlness.
Is anger supposed to be controlled?
No, but that's what I'm saying. That's just my whole conversation today. Like maybe I could allow myself more opportunities to just feel what I'm feeling in the moment and not let the fear of what might come out of my mouth prevent me from opening my mouth.
So you're right. This fear is real. What you're saying is that you want to permit yourself to get all the way to here.
No.
That you want to be able to, early on you were saying you want to be able to go as far as you want to go. I'm not saying fist fight. I'm just saying say whatever, lash out, regardless of what the person's day is about. I don't think that's really where you want to go. I think that's where you're afraid you're going to go. I don't think you're really going to go there. I feel like we're both aiming for some middle ground where we're not suppressing our anger, but we're also not about to get in fistfights with people who just lost their grandma.
Agreed.
There's a huge middle ground there, and I believe that you are intelligent and emotionally mature more than most, and have so much awareness of yourself and other people that if you go through that door, I don't think you're going to go too far through it, but if you do go too far through it, you calibrate. And that's a risk that I think is completely worth taking.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just terrifying.
Well, okay. Going through that door for anything is terrifying. I'm going to trust this person too much. That's
Yeah.
terrifying. I'm going to
Hmm.
give this control up to a company is terrifying. So like all of those things, I'm going to become a friend with this person, but they could hurt me. Terrifying,
Yeah.
right? All of those things are terrifying. All of those good things in life that we have to open that door. We have to take that risk in order to get that good thing are terrifying.
So I guess where we're at now is I am acknowledging that I am too close to keep sweet and so far away from punching someone in the face that I have a little bit of room to open up that door and to come a little bit closer. And I think like any new skill, it just takes practice. And I always say this, all the other places where I have come to that I'm happy with, it's because I practice the uncomfortableness of it over and over again. This is just one of those areas that I have not yet given myself time and space and permission to practice in the real world. And but I came to this today to have a conversation because I'm ready to do that. I'm so exhausted of not just allowing myself to simply be and to experience the fullness of what I'm feeling in the moment. And even if it's not expressing it, I think that there is a measure of not even allowing myself to feel it. So I guess what I'm concluding today is that I do have a little bit of growth to do in this area to get to where I want to be. I want to be a person that can speak my truths. And sometimes that means it comes out with some anger behind it. Coming soon on Super Random Things with those sisters. You know that I live in Minneapolis, and Minneapolis has been in the center of a lot of news lately, particularly because of the ICE occupation that we had in January and February and into March of this year. One of the things that happened when ICE was here was they decided to stage a lot of their operations in parking lots of Target stores. And Target stores didn't say no. They didn't say yes, but they didn't say no. They decided to take a very neutral stance. And it was a very, very unpopular decision. What ended up happening was that people started boycotting Targets, I think nationally, but especially here in Minneapolis. It was really, really noticeable. And I know that there were protests and sit ins at Target stores. It wasn't just the staging of the parking lot, it was also that they were allowing ICE to come into the stores and take employees and weren't doing anything to stop it. When all of this happened with Target, I made the decision to stop shopping at Target, which was a huge thing for me because I was like a Target like super user. So then I've had to find other ways, and it's been a challenge because Target was so easy.
I feel like Target has two angles right now that I am protesting, and I don't have Target where I live, nothing in this country, but I feel like there are two things that Target does that I would want to protest. One of them is that they really, really make it easy. They make it so easy that it's almost like a trance that one is put under, that you need all the stuff that's at Target. Because I shop at Walmart right now, and I could do it aisle by aisle, and it's not doesn't have that same sort of calculated trance to get you to buy a bunch of stuff. And then the second thing is it really has reduced its DEI significantly. So I think those are both, and because we're shopping there, that's feeding all of the capitalism. Do you have any opinions about what you're hearing? We would love to hear from you. Write something in the comments. We want to know.